A Prussian aristocrat unified a fragmented continent using war as a political tool and changed the destiny of Europe forever. Before we begin, let me know in the comments from where you are watching this video so I can know how far it has reached. In the heart of Europe, in the mid-19th century, chaos took the form of a map. More than 300 independent states shared language, culture, and history, but nothing else. Each principality had its own laws, its own currency, its own interests. Borders changed with marriages, inheritances, and minor wars. There was no common identity, only the distant memory of a Holy Roman Empire that had officially died in 1806, leaving behind a void that no one knew how to fill. In that world, Otto Eduard Leopold von Bismarck was born on the 1st of April, 1815, in Skonhausen, a small rural estate east of the Elbe River. His family belonged to the Junkers, the Prussian landed aristocracy, conservative to the core, rooted in military traditions and unwavering loyalty to the crown. His father was a nobleman without fortune or ambition. His mother, on the other hand, came from more enlightened circles with ties to the state bureaucracy. That combination shaped his character, the rough peasant toughness of the Junkers mixed with the administrative shrewdness of the educated class. During his youth, Bismarck showed no signs of greatness. He studied law in Göttingen and Berlin, but he stood out more for his excesses than for his academic dedication. He drank, fought, and accumulated debts. He was arrogant, impulsive, unbearable to many of his contemporaries. He seemed destined for a comfortable but inconsequential life, managing family lands, hunting, drinking beer in local taverns. But something changed in him during the 40s. Perhaps it was the death of his mother, perhaps the marriage to Johanna von Puttkamer, a deeply religious woman who anchored him emotionally. Or maybe it was simply that he found a purpose, to defend the Prussian order against the revolutionary waves shaking Europe. In 1848, revolutions broke out across the continent. In Paris, Vienna, Berlin, the masses demanded constitutions, freedoms, suffrage. The old empires trembled. In Prussia, King Frederick William IV yielded to popular pressure and promised reforms. Bismarck watched with contempt. To him, that was weakness. He believed that order and monarchical authority were the pillars of civilization, and that any concession to liberalism was a fatal mistake. He got involved in politics as an ultra-conservative deputy. His speeches were provocative, full of sarcasm, designed to infuriate liberals. He did not seek sympathy. He sought power. And he quickly learned that in politics, as in war, patience and timing were everything. During the 1850s, he served as the Prussian ambassador to the Federal Diet in Frankfurt, the political body supposedly coordinating the German states. There he witnessed up close the rivalry between Prussia and Austria, the two powers competing to dominate the German world. Austria, with its long imperial tradition, considered itself the natural leader. Prussia, militaristic and efficient, wanted that role for itself. Bismarck concluded something simple and brutal. There was no room for both. One had to give way, and he had no intention of letting it be Prussia. Later he was sent as ambassador to St. Petersburg and then to Paris. In Russia, he cultivated contacts with the Tsar's court. In France, he studied Napoleon III, the nephew of the great Bonaparte, a man who had come to power through a coup d'état and ruled with a mix of authoritarianism and populism. Bismarck admired his political cynicism, his ability to manipulate nationalist symbols while consolidating personal power. He learned that speeches were theater. The real game was played in the halls, in secret alliances, in veiled threats. In 1862, Prussia faced a constitutional crisis. King William I wanted to expand the army, but the liberal parliament refused to approve the necessary budget. The conflict threatened to paralyze the state. William considered abdicating. It was then that someone suggested Bismarck's name. He was unpopular, yes. Reactionary, of course. But he was also the only one willing to face Parliament without blinking. On the 22nd of September, 1862, Bismarck was appointed Prime Minister of Prussia. He was 47 years old. From the start, he made it clear that he would not negotiate. He would simply govern without Parliament. He collected taxes, funded the army, ignored protests. It was illegal according to the Constitution, but it worked. And then he uttered the words that would define his legacy. In a speech before the Budget Committee, he declared, "The great questions of the time will not be resolved by speeches and majority votes." That was the great mistake of 1848 and 1849, but by blood and iron. The liberals were horrified. The conservatives hesitated. But Bismarck was not asking for permission. He was warning. His strategy was simple: strengthen Prussia until it was impossible to ignore, and then use it to reshape Europe. The first step was Denmark. In 1864, the Danish kingdom tried to formally incorporate the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein, territories with a majority German population. Bismarck saw the opportunity. He convinced Austria to join Prussia in a joint war against Denmark. It was brief and effective. Denmark was crushed. The duchies came under Austro-Prussian joint administration. But Bismarck knew that was only a pretext. The real target was Austria. Over the next 2 years, he wove a diplomatic web. He made sure France would not intervene. He signed a secret agreement with Italy, which also had disputes with Austria. He isolated Vienna. In June 1866, after deliberately provoking a crisis over the administration of the duchies, Prussia declared war on Austria. Europe expected a long conflict. It was mistaken. In 7 weeks, the modernized Prussian army, equipped with Drey's breech-loading rifles that fired much faster than Austrian muskets, demolished the imperial forces. The decisive battle was Königgrätz on the 3rd of July. More than 400,000 men fought. Austria lost more than 40,000 dead, wounded, and captured. Prussia barely 7,000. It was a disaster for Vienna, and Bismarck knew when to stop. He did not humiliate Austria with devastating peace terms. He did not annex Austrian territories. He did not march on Vienna. He simply expelled them from the German game. The Treaty of Prague dissolved the old German Confederation. Austria was out. Prussia organized a new North German Confederation under its absolute leadership. The southern German states, Bavaria, Baden, Württemberg, remained independent but tied through secret military alliances. The balance had shifted. Prussia was now the dominant power in the German world. But the last enemy remained: France. Napoleon III watched the Prussian rise anxiously. He had hoped the Austro-Prussian War would weaken both. Instead, it strengthened one. And that one was now on his border. Bismarck knew a war with France was inevitable. But he also knew he needed France to be seen as the aggressor. Only then would the southern German states fight alongside Prussia. The opportunity came in 1870. The Spanish throne was vacant. It was offered to a prince of the Hohenzollern house, the same royal dynasty as Prussia. France alarmed. A Hohenzollern in Madrid would mean being surrounded by potential enemies. Napoleon pressured. The prince renounced the candidacy. It should have been the end of the matter. But Bismarck turned it into a crisis. The French ambassador demanded that King William guarantee that no Hohenzollern would ever again aspire to the Spanish throne. The king, at the spa town of Ems, politely rejected the demand and sent a telegram to Bismarck describing the encounter. Bismarck edited the telegram. He removed the courtesies. He made it seem that the king had scorned the French ambassador and that the ambassador had insulted the king. Then he published it. Outrage exploded in both Paris and Berlin. On the 19th of July, 1870, France declared war. Exactly what Bismarck wanted. The southern German states, feeling threatened by France, activated their alliances with Prussia. For the first time in centuries, Germans from north and south marched together. The campaign was devastating. At Sedan, on the 2nd of September, the French army was encircled. Napoleon III, sick and humiliated, personally surrendered. An emperor captured. All of France in shock. But the war was not over. In Paris, a provisional government proclaimed the Republic and continued resistance. Bismarck ordered the siege of the capital. For months, Paris resisted, Hungary, freezing, bombarded. Finally, in January 1871, it surrendered. And then came the symbolic moment. On the 18th of January, 1871, in the Hall of Mirrors of the Palace of Versailles, the very place where French kings had celebrated their grandeur, William I of Prussia was proclaimed German emperor. The German Empire was born officially, not in Berlin, not in a parliament, in enemy territory, surrounded by conquered banners. A clear message: Germany was born by force. Bismarck had achieved the impossible, but the price was very high. More than 150,000 soldiers dead, cities in ruins. And, most dangerously, France humiliated, forced to cede Alsace and Lorraine, and to pay a huge indemnity. Bismarck knew he had created a permanent enemy. Over the next 2 decades, he ruled as Chancellor of the Empire with a single goal: to prevent France from finding allies for revenge. He built a complex system of alliances. First, the League of the Three Emperors, uniting Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. When that became unsustainable, he created the Triple Alliance with Austria and Italy. He signed secret reinsurance treaties with Russia. He kept France diplomatically isolated. He was a brilliant tightrope walker. He maintained peace through calculated threats, contradictory alliances, and diplomacy so complex that only he seemed to understand it. Internally, he faced multiple challenges. The Catholic Church, powerful in the southern regions, distrusted the Protestant Prussian state. Bismarck launched the Kulturkampf, a campaign of laws to reduce clerical influence. He banned religious orders, controlled education, imprisoned rebellious bishops. It was a failure. Catholics united, formed political parties, resisted. Finally, Bismarck had to retreat. Then came the socialist movement. Workers' parties grew rapidly, fueled by the empire's accelerated industrialization. Bismarck saw them as an existential threat. In 1878, after 2 assassination attempts against the emperor, he banned the Social Democratic Party, shut down newspapers, arrested leaders. But he also did something unprecedented. He introduced the world's first social security system: health insurance in 1883, accident insurance in 1884, old age pensions in 1889. It was not generosity, it was strategy. If the state cared for workers, Bismarck thought, they would not need the socialists. It was a partial success. Workers accepted the benefits but continued voting socialist. Bismarck aged, and the world changed. In 1888, William I died. His son, Frederick III, reigned only 99 days before dying of cancer. The new emperor was William II, grandson of the first emperor, young, impulsive, ambitious. He wanted to rule personally. And Bismarck, used to decades of absolute control, was not willing to yield. Conflict was inevitable. In March 1890, Bismarck was forced to resign. He was 75 years old. He had been chancellor for almost 30 years. He retired to his estates, bitter, writing memoirs that criticized the new emperor. He died on the 30th of July, 1898, in Friedrichsruh. His legacy is impossible to summarize in black and white. He unified Germany, yes. He created an industrial and military power that transformed Europe. He introduced revolutionary social reforms. But he also normalized war as a political tool. He ruled through manipulation, censorship, and repression. He built an alliance system so fragile that it collapsed when he disappeared. 16 years after his death, the First World War broke out. The alliances he balanced with such care became rigid blocks that dragged the entire continent into destruction. Some historians argue that without Bismarck, the war would have come sooner. Others that without him, it would never have happened. Perhaps both are right. Because Bismarck was a genius of power, he understood how states, men, and ambitions worked. He knew when to attack and when to retreat, when to lie and when to tell uncomfortable truths. But he was also a man of the 19th century, incapable of imagining a world where power was not exercised from above, where the masses were not simply pieces to move. He created a strong Germany, but he did not create a free Germany. And that contradiction marked his history for generations. Today, his figure remains divisive. For some, the brightest statesman of his era. For others, the architect of a militarism that led to greater catastrophes. The truth is that he changed the map of Europe. And when he finished his work, nothing was the same again.